Police investigate a suspected double murder-suicide case in Yuen Long. Experts trying to trace the origins of a suspected E. coli outbreak at Princess Margaret Hospital. Good evening and thank you for joining us. A family tragedy unfolded in Yuen Long, claiming the lives of three men spanning 3 generations of the same household. The grandfather and his son were found dead last night in the grandpa's house. The grandson later fell from a height at a nearby housing estate after he reported a death to the police.
The suspected double murder-suicide case first came to light in this village house at Chung Hing New Village, Yuen Long. The house bears a sign that reads Coli Restaurant. Police cordoned off the scene. At about 8 p.m. on Tuesday, police received a report about 2 men lying unconscious inside the house. Both were later certified dead at the scene. Police said the pair were father and son, 93 years old and 69 years old respectively. Both were discovered in the kitchen, having bled profusely with multiple cuts on the face, neck and back. A pair of scissors and a fruit knife found to be stained with blood. About 5 minutes after the report about the 2 men, police received another call about a 19-year-old man falling from a height at Long Ping Estate about 600 meters away from the family home. The young man died. He was later identified as a grandson of the 93-year-old man. The alleged murder scene at Chung Hing New Village remained off-limits in the morning. The police said the grandson reported the deaths of his grandfather and father after leaving the village home alone before he plunged to his death from a height. Police said they are ruling out the presence of a 4th person at the scene for now. And for the time being, they believe one of the deceased was the murderer. Police are investigating whether there were any disputes between them. Officers inquired the neighbors of the deceased about the case. Some of the residents said the 69-year-old son often visited his father who lived there. He also treated his mother well. The neighbor said she praised the grandson for having taken care of his grandfather when the latter was discharged from the hospital last month. Another neighbor said the grandfather seemed to have been involved in a court case with developers as he refused to sell his property in Campton. But she's not sure if that has sparked a row in the family. Reportedly, the 3 deceased men lived separately.
A cancer specialist died last Friday after being infected with Shiga toxin-producing E. coli in a suspected outbreak at Princess Margaret Hospital. Authorities are still tracing the source of the infection. Some infectious disease specialists said it's too early to tell whether the death and that type of E. coli were connected. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Shiga toxin-producing E. coli is commonly found in the guts of humans and warm-blooded animals. It is highly resistant to acid, making it especially hard to kill via stomach acid. Once infected, patients could suffer from symptoms ranging from high fever to bloody diarrhea. Among the 3 affected cancer specialists at Princess Margaret Hospital, only 1 tested positive for the Shiga toxin-producing E. coli. The other 2, including the deceased, showed negative results. Professor Yuen Long, a microbiologist from HKU School of Clinical Medicine, who was involved in the investigation, said the latter 2 doctors may have taken antibiotics prior to being tested. He added that it's reasonable to believe there was an outbreak as all 3 doctors had worked in the same place for 6 days and experienced diarrhea. Yuen said there are reasons to suspect the cases belong to a cluster, but they will not rule out any other possibility, such as another kind of infection or immune system disorders. He said patients should avoid antibiotics when infected with Shiga toxin-producing E. coli, and stressed the antibacterial agent could worsen their condition. This as the deceased doctor was provided with antibiotics to treat his symptoms prior to his death. However, the HKU microbiologist believes he could have been infected at the later stage and emphasized the initial treatment was appropriate. Meanwhile, some infectious disease specialists reminded residents not to take anti-diarrhea drugs when infected. Since diarrhea allows the body to get rid of toxins, it is best to let it run its course. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Greater Bay Airlines said it had cancelled 128 flights between February and March, owing to a lack of internal communication, according to a report submitted to the government. Authorities required the airline to submit a monthly report to the Air Transport Licensing Authority at designated times. Around 5,500 passengers were affected by the mass cancellations. Greater Bay Airlines initially explained the flights were axed because of a delay in deliveries of new purchased aircraft, but has now provided an alternative explanation in its report to the government. The carrier said it already contacted affected passengers and offered refunds or replacement flights. Canada, Mexico, and the European Union have condemned U.S. President Donald Trump's global imposition of 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminium imports, which will take effect on March 12. Danny Zhou tells us more.
With a still looming U.S. tariff threat on steel and aluminium, Canada's premiers arrived in Washington, D.C. to fight back against a widening trade war. They are seeking to convince U.S. politicians that the tariffs will be detrimental to both of their economies. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who is attending the AI Global Summit in Paris, condemned the tariffs as entirely unjustified, pledging his administration would stand up for Canadian workers and industries.
We will be working with the American administration over the coming weeks to highlight the negative impacts on Americans and Canadians of these unacceptable tariffs. But we'll also be working with our international partners and friends. And if it comes to that, our response, of course, will be firm and clear.
Mexico, which has a deficit with America in steel and aluminium trade, also pushed back. Mexican Economy Minister Marcelo Ebrard said at a press conference that the United States earns more from its trade with Mexico. He added his country represented 52% of U.S.'s global exports at the end of 2024. And the imposition of these tariffs would raise the price of components used in different industries. Earlier, Trump threatened to slap across-the-board 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, but later agreed to a 30-day pause in return for concessions. It is reported that his fresh levies on steel and aluminium will be stacked on top of other duties on goods from the two countries, adding up to as high as 50%. Trump's hikes were received with surprise in Brazil, another major exporter of the metals to the U.S. The industry lobby group Alco Brazil argued that the move would benefit neither country, while politicians in the steel production hub warned of its potential devastating impact on local employment, revenues and public policies. The European Union, meanwhile, vowed to take firm countermeasures against the U.S. The bloc is set to reimpose its 50% tariffs on American whiskies if the two sides do not reach an agreement in the steel and aluminium dispute by the end of March, according to media reports. Tokyo is keeping close watch on Trump's trade overhaul. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi confirmed that they had requested exemption from the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium levied by the U.S. government. Japanese Industry Minister Yoji Muto contended that Washington's wide-ranging trade restriction measures could have a big impact on the global economy and the multilateral trading system based on World Trade Organization rules. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
And still ahead, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance calls on the EU to loosen its restrictions on AI development. Cervical cancer case counts on the rise over the past decade in Hong Kong. And more than 200 couples tied a knot on Chinese Valentine's Day. Welcome back. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has urged the European Union to greatly loosen its restrictions on artificial intelligence development, saying it is strangling the technology. He made the comments at the AI Action Summit in Paris. Nasvi Karim has more.
Global leaders arrived in Paris for the summit on inclusive and sustainable artificial intelligence, hoping to forge a clear path forward for the future of AI. Instead, they're left still unsure of where the technology is headed. The United States, represented by Vice President J.D. Vance, wants to maintain global dominance, telling Europeans to unshackle their massive regulations. The Europeans want to cut bureaucracy, but also want to make sure the technology is safe. While China, through the likes of DeepSeek and its open source coding, is also looking to become a leader in AI development.
This administration will ensure that American AI technology continues to be the gold standard worldwide, and we are the partner of choice for others. Number two, we believe that excessive regulation of the AI sector could kill a transformative industry just as it's taking off. Number three, we feel very strongly that AI must remain free from ideological bias and that American AI will not be co-opted into a tool for authoritarian censorship.
The US and the United Kingdom declined to endorse the final declaration, which was signed by around 60 countries, including China. A spokesperson for British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said Britain was not following the US, but taking into consideration its own national interests. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced 200 billion euros in public and private AI investment in Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron, co-organizer of the summit alongside Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, touted newly announced investments in France worth 109 billion euros over the next 5 years. China was represented by President Xi Jinping's special representative Zhang Guoqing, who is also one of the country's vice premiers. Zhang said Beijing is willing to work with other countries to promote development, safeguard security and share achievements in the field of AI. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Vance met European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the sidelines of the AI summit. Von der Leyen and Vance met for the first time since the Trump administration took charge. The U.S. Vice President had earlier warned global leaders and tech industry executives that excessive regulation could cripple the growth of AI. Von der Leyen had described the European approach to AI as cooperative and collaborative. Vance also met Modi, who is scheduled to travel to the U.S. to meet President Donald Trump. The Indian leader said on social media that the visit would cement U.S.-Indian friendship and boost ties in various sectors. He said the talks with Vance would cover some of that ground. Cervical cancer case counts have been on the rise over the past 10 years. A concerning trend, too, with more young people now being afflicted with the disease. HPV Prevention Alliance cited statistics from the Hong Kong Cancer Registry that the city saw nearly 600 newly diagnosed cervical cancer cases in 2021. That has marked a more than 30% jump over the past decade. In 2022, 167 people died from cervical cancer, making it the 9th deadliest cancer for women in Hong Kong. The group urged people to undergo regular screenings and receive vaccination against human papillomavirus, or HPV, which has proven to significantly cut the risks of cancer. Lanterns are set to illuminate the Tsim Sha Tsui harbourfront tonight. Even before nightfall at around 6 p.m., some tourists and locals already reached the vicinity of the cultural center in Tsim Sha Tsui. The lanterns feature various designs, including giant pandas, koi fish, and peacocks, as well as a massive 6-meter-tall palace display. The Lantern Festival is said to have originated during the Han Dynasty with a history of over 2,000 years. It falls on the 15th day of the first lunar month, marking the first full moon of the year. In ancient times, curfews were imposed after dark, with such restrictions lifted during the Lantern Festival. The Lantern Festival is also known as Chinese Valentine's Day, which brings lovers together. In Hong Kong, 223 couples registered to marry on this special day. Take a look.
A union of hearts and a promise of forever.
This is a very special day, and we hope that it can symbolize our love and the true and the trust between us. And we really hope that our love can last forever.
On this year's Lantern Festival, love is in the air, so is some soft drizzle. 23 pairs of brides and grooms tied a knot on Chinese Valentine's Day at the newly opened Immigration Department headquarters in Chenghuanou.
It's our Valentine's Day, yeah, so it's double meaning for us.
And getting married on Chinese Valentine's Day, it's wonderful. Well, it adds a special feeling to this special day, yeah, and I think it's something that we'll remember forever.
The headquarters also showcases an exhibition curating Hong Kong's history of matrimonial traditions.
The Wedding Stories in Archives exhibition takes the audience on a journey to revisit the development of Hong Kong's marriage customs and ceremonies and unveil the lesser-known stories about weddings here in Hong Kong.
The Immigration Department arranged performances marrying both Chinese and Western instruments to celebrate the joyous occasion and the new chapter of life for the newlyweds. A new beginning of promise, growth, and continuing love for the rest of their life, this groom said. A total of 223 couples registered to marry on Lantern Festival, down 10% year-on-year. But among them, 127 pairs tied a knot at the marriage registry, marking a 6-year high. Meanwhile, 184 couples have registered to marry on February 14th, the Western Valentine's Day. The figure is 30% higher than last year.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.